Okay, everybody, thank you so much for being here today. I'm Natalie Nidham. I'm a holistic nutritionist, epigenetic coach, and once again, I am here with Jean-François Tremblay, the owner, founder of CanLab, a company in Montreal that is, I'm going to say, at this stage of the game, leading manufacturer of peptides and other really interesting compounds. Certainly in Canada and possibly in North America at this point. So welcome, Jean-François. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here today.
No, thanks to you again.
My pleasure, as always. So today we're going to talk about, I'm going to set us up here. We really started this discussion around this particular episode talking about SARMs and other non-SARMs like SARMs compounds. But first, we're going to talk about something that you are releasing on Monday that a lot of people are very excited about, and that is the peptide ARA 290. So this is a relatively new peptide on the market, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, like it's really only been talked about in the last few months in this community. And what's got everybody really excited about this peptide is the concept that it seems to be showing promise in regenerating the very tiniest nerve endings on the end of motor nerves. So these are the nerves that activate muscle. And the reason why that is so exciting to people is, of course, first of all, from an anti-aging perspective, we know that we lose those nerve endings over the years naturally, and that impacts our ability of fluid movement and even of recruiting muscle fibers to maintain strength.
Exactly.
Right? But also in other disease states. So people with fibromyalgia, which I believe there have been some clinical studies that showed some really interesting results on, neuropathies, and then I'm going to guess a whole bunch of other disease, imbalanced states or disease states that can be impacted by this. So you have this coming out in in a few days now?
Well, the compound is ready. It has been ready for about 10 days.
Yeah.
We just encounter, I'm going to break the news for my competitors. They will encounter a problem when it's time to dissolve it, because the actual solubility of the compound is 0.23 milligram per ml. So if you wanted to do a sub-Q with that, you would need to do like 17 ml sub-Q to get the target, what seems to be right now the target dose, which is 4 milligrams
per dose. Yeah,
per dose. So that's a lot of ml for, it's either a huge sub-Q, it's actually not.
Well, it's an IV. It's really an IV at that.
Or it would be like 15, 20 sub-Q injections to get your daily dose. Right. So that won't happen. So we did solve that solubility problem, but for that same reason, that's why they're going to come in unidose vials, so 4 milligrams per vial. Again, due to the solubility of it, because even if we were able to solubilize at 4 milligram per ml, which is pretty much the saturation, to lyophilize, you cannot, let's say we were to put 8 or 12 milligrams per vial, so we would have needed to put 3 ml of water in the vial, so to lyophilize, and that's too much water. It's going to make the glass break. It's going to explode. So there is so much we can do.
So people will be receiving, when they buy this, they're buying 30 days worth.
If they buy 28 days, basically
28 vials.
28 vials.
Oh, that's so interesting. So then every time
one vial. It has nothing to do with the stability of the product. It's very stable, but the making of it, it's this way.
Okay, so then I don't know, do you want to get into this now? Like how much backwater do they need to?
1 ml at least.
So it's 1 ml for every 4.
1 ml. It might be, even with 1 ml, it might be a little
chunky,
cloudy.
Yeah.
But good for injection. don't worry about that. Actually, I didn't see it myself yet. My biochemist reported, so I'll know for sure Monday. I'll try myself.
Sorry, so have you tried it yet?
No. I'm gonna have it today's Thursday, probably tomorrow. I'm gonna have the vials, so I'll try it out on myself. So if I'm still answering email by Monday, so it's all good. I didn't die.
All right. Well, you've been pretty good at this stuff so far, so that's great. So anyway, so that's super exciting. Is there anything else you want to add about how ARA 290 seems to work for people or different conditions
Well,
that can help? And as an
you explained it pretty well. Basically, me, I see a big potential, but has to be seen on strength loss when you get older. Because even athletes, bodybuilders would keep taking anabolics in their 40s, 50s. They don't lose muscle mass. They have the same muscle mass as when they were 30, for example. But they do lose strength. That's systematic. And we know strength is not modulated only by muscle mass. It's modulated by the nervous system too. In fact, for those who are a bit into training, it's believed that the first few weeks when you start a training program, 2, 3, 4 weeks, your dramatic increase in strength is not due to muscle gain.
No, it's neural.
It's neural. A better coordination of the muscle groups, a better intramuscular, so recruitments of the fibers at the right time and in the right sequence. And that's all neural. So I hope, I see, and I hope it is, I see a big potential to help with that, as you mentioned a bit, to help with that degeneration with age.
Interesting. So how old do you think people are, like at what age do you think that strength loss starts to kick in? Like when would someone, because you obviously then from that perspective, a 30-year-old really wouldn't.
It all depends. And it's funny because there has been in the last few years a lot of studies that show that one of the best ways to maintain mobility for older people, it's dancing. And it figures because there is a huge component of coordination in dancing. So you solicitate those neurons, so it helps them, to keep them alive. Same for training. What people forget about training is this: if you always do the same movements, and as we get older, when we do weight train, we kind of develop, we have favorite movements for chest. We have bench press, for example, and back, this one. And we just do them because actually we're better at them and we like them, good. But that's not the way to go. What you want to do is change movements. So you solicitate different neural patterns, and that will help to maintain that finesse of motion, so to say. It's be like dancing with weights. But you understand my point, no?
Absolutely.
So, and I know for myself, it's a huge drag. I hate it when I do a movement I didn't do for years. You're less coordinated, it's harder, but actually that's what you want, to solicitate those new patterns.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So so this will be interesting. I guess that whether you're using it as an anti-aging as part of an anti-aging protocol, or I mean, really exciting for people who've been dealing with these chronic issues. But I think it bears mentioning, and I know that it's been mentioned by a lot of other people, but what's particularly in the inflammatory and disease states, what people really have to keep in mind is that, this isn't treating the cause of whatever's going on. This is really coming in to help repair damage. But so if you still have the source of the damage active, you're a little bit chasing your tail. I mean, on the one hand, for people with intractable disease, it can help them to at least hold off the progression. But you know, it's
Yeah,
really,
the best example I have of that is a comparison, because I've worked a great deal over the years with athletes,
yeah,
and they would have injury, and we, let's say shoulder, and we isolate the problem to a bad form, let's say in bench press. And so they start to take the peptides, and they say, yeah, it's working, but not so well, but they didn't stop training. And if you have a shoulder injury, give it a rest and
yeah,
don't train that area. Take the peptide, fix the injury, and at the same time, when you resume training, work on your form so it doesn't happen again. So peptides are amazingly good, but many of them, it's still allopathic medicine where you treat the symptoms.
yeah.
And some of them, yes, they go at the source. The bioregulators actually go at the Russian ones, they go at the source. But a lot of them, they fix a problem, but they don't fix why it happened.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if you don't look at that, then you're just, it's going to come back. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Or,
Well,
or,
I think
or,
it goes
or you're condemned to use a peptide forever. And
exactly.
financially, it's maybe not the best solution.
No. No, and plus but having said that, sometimes people don't know what is driving their condition, or it's
Exactly.
too hard
So
for them. So at the very least, if it can offer them some relief, or at least stop the progression of whatever's
exactly.
going on, it can be helpful. Okay, great. So that's ARA 290. We're going to move on to...
And maybe we should talk just a little bit about the price. I know people, they freaked out a bit, but come on, if you look milligram per milligram, it's cheaper than BPC 157. It's cheaper than a lot of those other peptides. It's just because they say, oh, it's daily, it's 4 milligrams. Yeah, it's good, but take BPC at 4 milligrams a day, it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah, no,
So
we tumbled the numbers, you and me. BPC 157 from your place costs $13.50 a milligram. And the price that you're going to be selling the ARA 290 at, it comes out to $5.80 a milligram. So it's actually way more economical. It's just that to get it the effective dose, you need that 4 milligrams a day, and you need a good 28 days.
there you go.
Right? So,
and we don't determine the price according to the cost of the therapy. We determine it on the cost of making it, and of course we're a business, and and don't think we make a huge amount of money. There was a post I made recently. We don't work with TFA. We do the acetate version to make sure, and that there is a cost of doing this, and the cost of lyophilization by itself.
yeah.
When we lyophilize, actually it's one more step in the sterility of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So, and every step, everything you make, not only human, because the people it's time we spend, so there is a price for that, but of actual, because when we make a peptide, some people, they say, yeah, but the amino acids are so cheap. Yeah, of course they're cheap. If you want, I'll ship them to you and you make your peptides. But the cost of the liquids plus, well, actually they couldn't, because some liquids in Canada, at least, if you would order them, probably the next day the RCMP would come knock at your door. They're controlled because they can be used to do other drugs. But there is a cost to all that, and to have, when we talk high quality, it's every step from the beginning to the end. So
well, and frankly, your pricing is historically and continues to be extremely fair when we look at the competitors on the marketplace. So and the reality is that what we know when we order from you guys is that we're going to get a very consistent product, and it's always going to be effective, and it's always going to be super clean. So people make their choices, and it's all good. But I think it was important to tumble those numbers for people on the ARA 290 because there was a bit of a sticker shock.
Yeah.
But I think people don't have context sometimes. So putting it into context like that will help people to understand the ins and outs of it. Okay, let's move on because we only
Yes,
have
we're
a little
trying
bit of
to
time
make it
left today.
more user-friendly.
We're trying to be more. So I want to start by so we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about MK677, which is called ibutamorin, which is actually not a peptide. It's actually a ghrelin mimetic. So I have a personal interest in this because most of the ghrelin mimetics cause me to get itchy and bumpy. So I'm pretty keen to learn about this one. And then we're going to talk about RAD 140, which again, I have a personal interest in because I'm starting my own trial. And then the other one we said we were going to talk about was Ostarine. Yes?
Yeah, which...
MK28.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about SARMs.
In general, yes.
Ostarine, LGD 4033, and RAD 140 are the most known and the most commercially available.
So wait, before you go, let's tell people what SARM stands for. SARM stands for?
Specific androgen receptor modulator.
Exactly.
So for you to understand that name, think of testosterone as an androgen receptor modulator.
Yeah.
So SARMs do the same thing, but much more specifically, meaning when testosterone was synthesized first back in the 50s, they say, okay, that's great, now we have testosterone, but they noticed a lot of side effects. So a difference was made between the anabolic effect and the androgenic effect.
Exactly.
So the anabolic effect, it's specifically muscle retention and bone retention.
Yep.
All the rest, androgenic, increased hair growth, oily skin, increase all the side effects you get from testosterone are classified as androgenic. So they started to modify the testosterone molecule to decrease the androgenic effect and or increase the anabolism of it. And that's steroids, anabolic steroids started. So they were pretty successful with some compounds, meaning that they would be much less androgenic than anabolic. But when they would do that, the molecule wouldn't be as anabolic as testosterone. I'm thinking of methanoline, which is primobolan. And it's highly anabolic, very few androgenic effect, but you need to take more milligram per milligram than testosterone to have the same anabolism as testosterone. Some other compounds, they are more anabolic than testosterone, much more potent. But even if they're less androgenic, the ratio is lower than with testosterone. If you have a compound, and there is a couple in mind where they are like 2-3 times more anabolic than testosterone, but maybe 2 times more androgenic than testosterone. So you'll get, yes, the ratio is good, kind of, but you will still get those androgenic effects.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I want to talk about a little bit, just as we're going into this, is, you know, I think that the interest in some of these compounds, I mean, obviously the bodybuilding community has been very interested and big users and adopters of these compounds. But I think as we move into a world where people are looking to maintain their vitality and their longevity, when they're looking to optimize their health, so we're not necessarily looking to all become muscle-bound bodybuilders. What we're really looking for, and for me in particular, what I'm looking for is to offset some of the effects of natural aging. So, you know, you're kind of walking this fine line where you're looking for that effect on the muscle and the bone. You want to, obviously, I don't want any of the androgenic effects. I don't want to sprout a beard overnight or any of these things. So what we're going to talk about today is really looking to these compounds as compounds that can help us to age better and definitely therapeutically in elderly communities, for example, where you see frailty really starting to kick in. Can they be helpful to reduce frailty in an elderly population?
And that's what they were meant for. You know, when they were the people who developed them, that's what they had in mind.
Yeah.
In the very first studies, that's what they came up as a conclusion. They're very safe and could be considered to replace testosterone for men and for women
Yeah.
in testosterone replacement therapy, because you don't see that much in America, but in Europe and in South America, when women go on HRT, hormonal replacement therapy, after menopause, most of the time it's injected. They inject like once a week or something, and there is a bit of testosterone in their compounds, because women do need testosterone. They just need much less than men.
Well,
And
but yeah, one thing about testosterone in women is what people don't realize. It's actually, it's our dominant hormone. We have more testosterone naturally than we do estrogen. It's just,
well, actually, the truth is, if you take a 75 years old man and woman, chances are that the woman will have higher testosterone level at that time than the man.
Yeah.
And the man will have higher estrogen level than the woman.
Interesting.
Because they're lacking of, you know, their predominant one that went down.
Yeah.
But testosterone is not only made, and that's not accounted for, but it's made intracellular. And
Yeah.
we don't know where, how, but we know it's there. That it's not in man, it's not produced by the testicle, and in woman, it's not only produced in the les surrénales in French, the
adrenals.
The adrenals.
Yeah. Well, actually, in women, we make it.
That's where it comes from for women.
But also ovaries, right? And so that's why menopause is such a disaster.
Yeah, that's why it goes down and at one point to be introduced. So anyway, those studies they concluded that they could really be a nice replacement.
Okay.
As much for the effect and the safety. They're much milder on your system. They're not harsh on the liver or the kidneys. In higher dosages, they do affect your cholesterol levels. The bad one may go up a bit or a lot depending on dosages. So, and it may actually, it does affect in higher dosage the liver enzymes. But normally, the liver enzymes.
Yeah, because the one I saw for liver, there was one in particular that was mentioned for liver was, hang on, I'll find it. I have all these notes that I took to get ready. Of course, now I have to find them. Well, it's one we're not talking about today, Cardarine. But apparently the liver toxicity they said was at 1,000 times the dose in.
Yeah, but SARMs, because I knew of many people who went for blood tests, their liver enzymes was higher. But those who told the doctor what they were taking, then the doctor said, oh, okay, it's okay. Because it's not pathological. You're taking a compound that needs
to be processed.
Metabolized. Liver is just doing its thing. So
right, and so that brings up the point that, you know, anybody who's going to be using these compounds in any way, you've got to commit to regular blood work. Like, you've got to keep an eye on what's going on with you. So make sure that you have an understanding of where your cholesterol is, your triglycerides, so that after 2 or 3 months of using a compound like this, if you're going to go there, you can repeat the test and compare, right? Because you need to understand what effect it's having for you. We know in general what the effects are going to be, but bioindividuality rules, and different people are going to react differently to the
and there are a few people who may have bad reactions.
Yeah.
For some reason, you know, I don't even want to go into that. Never think that any compound is for everybody at 100%.
Absolutely.
So there might be cases where, well, sorry, it's too bad, but it's not for you. Don't take it. Yeah. And, you know, not much else can be said, and we look for something else. So that said, SARMs and other things I'd like to attend. A lot of people, they say, yeah, but those compounds are new, and, you know, we don't know down the line in 20, 30 years. Well, actually, they're not new. And I mean it in two ways. First, the first studies on SARMs were made in the 90s. So that's quite a while ago. It's over
30 years.
decades.
Yeah.
And two, yes, we knew about them indirectly before because they're actually, because that's, you know, where do SARMs come from? Some crazy scientist in his lab thought up of that
That's where everything else
molecule.
comes from. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, there were compounds that were discovered back in the 60s, and they are anti-androgen. So they were used for some cases where, like in women, I don't know, breast cancer, so you want to lower the androgens, or men, actually, for a while, they were used to castrate men chemically.
Okay.
But what was interesting is that they had a higher affinity for the testosterone receptor, so they would bind but block the testosterone from binding, but without stimulating the receptor. And they were very, very specific to those receptors in the muscle and in the bones, and in some tissues in some cases. So some crazy guy in his lab, he had the idea. He said, what if we modify that molecule that we know a lot about, the same way they modify testosterone to make anabolic steroids? Let's tweak with it so it keeps its affinity for the receptors, but instead of blocking it, it stimulates it. And bang, SARMs were born.
Boom. Nice.
So, so we know for decades of use, SARMs themselves and its precursors, that yeah, you won't grow a third leg or a tail by using them. You know.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
We're pretty sure. So it's pretty safe to use, actually.
Okay, so let's start. We've broken our rule. We're half an hour in. Okay, so we're going to do RAD 140 first. So RAD 140 actually is a SARMs.
Yes.
It's one of the ones that actually qualifies. It's one of the newer ones, but it's actually been fairly well researched.
Yeah, it is my favorite, actually, for a few reasons.
Yeah, and apparently it seems to be able to reverse androgen-induced prostate enlargement.
Yeah, that's one reason.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
It also seems to be neuroprotective.
That's right.
It inhibits the growth of estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So right there, we've got some really interesting possible health benefits. And on top of that, it's quite specific to increasing lean muscle mass. It helps with bone density, and it's very selective for that.
And it has the best ratio.
Yeah, exactly, because it doesn't have the androgenic effect.
Clinically, it doesn't have. It has a ratio of 90:1. That means it's not 90 times more anabolic than testosterone. It's actually a bit less anabolic, maybe 95%.
Yeah.
But it's 90 times less androgenic.
Wow.
So clinically, it means no androgenic effect. So that is one of the main reasons why it's my favorite. It's practically, it's a pure anabolic.
Yeah, and also it says, also what I've read is that it doesn't actually suppress endogenous testosterone.
Oh, no, not at all. No, that was a misconception that at the beginning, I felt for it too.
Yeah. But
then when you start to look at blood results, again, that's the nice thing, you see that even on high dosages of RAD 140, the LH and LSH level don't go down a bit. So that's an indicator that there is no inhibition at all in the higher centers.
Right. So the brain
but testosterone levels do go down for another reason, is that SARMs, they lower the production of SHBG, you know, the steroids.
Hormone binding globulin.
Yeah. Yeah, did
so
I put
it
the
lowers
letters?
them or it raises them?
Others? Yeah, okay. So it lowers it.
It lowers sex
So
hormone.
you lose that buffering effect, because what it does, it binds testosterone, and when your blood level goes down,
You get a
then
feedback.
you
Yeah.
get, but from the globulin in the blood, so it's going to release more to maintain that level of testosterone. Eventually it goes down a bit at night, which provokes the secretion of LH at night. Why in the morning you have, it's a daily cycle.
You have that boost in testosterone.
So if you have lowered
sex hormone, SHBG.
I mix up the letters, French, English. No, I don't know which order. SAGB or BG.
BG. Yeah.
BG. So, and those drugs and other ones, they do that sometimes. They lower that. So you have less buffer. So the testosterone is there to be evacuated. So it goes away too fast. Mm-hmm. And when you do a blood test, it shows as if you had low level of testosterone.
Interesting.
So, but it's not due to an inhibition at all. So that was a big mistake we made, thinking that.
And so it also says, like, so far nobody's detected any negative effects on the liver because it's so specific. Is that
because some drugs are easy for the liver to break down, so
right. So it doesn't,
and some are very hard, and that's what it puts too much strain on the liver, and that can bring about complications.
Okay.
So that's the only reason. Or the kidneys, same for the kidneys. Right. Ibuprofen can really, I know guys who took way too much for too long, and now they're on dialysis.
Wow.
And specifically because of taking, but I'm talking like 15, 20 tablets a day for years.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. Okay. So now what about, does it have any effect on cholesterol? Or
yeah, it will increase the bad one.
The LDL?
Yeah. But there are some people looking into that now because there are fraction of LDL.
Right.
And they're not all bad. So now they're trying to find out if it affects the bad fraction of LDL.
Like the VLDL or the oxidized, So so the key here is to keep your inflammation low, because if your inflammation is low, then you're less likely to oxidize those little VLDL.
Well, I believe cholesterol levels are a marker of a deeper problem, which is inflammation. So even if it's high, it may not, that is not the problem, and that's why actually taking statins is actually, you're masking a problem, because you just shut down the marker.
Yeah.
And you don't do nothing for the problem. So it puts you in a much higher risk.
Well, and also we know that some cholesterol is pretty important to the body, right? Like there's
the liver makes 2 grams of cholesterol a day. Why? Could make up to 2 grams, because if you don't eat cholesterol, you're just going to make it. It's essential to life.
Exactly.
To the cell membranes.
Okay, so RAD 140.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Ostarine, MK2866. Kind of, okay, what we said about RAD in terms of neuroprotection and prostate protection, we can affirm it because it has been studied. Now, you may or may not have that same effect with other SARMs. We just don't know.
Okay.
Maybe someday some guy will look at it and say, oh yeah, Ostarine has that same effect too.
Oh, so it hasn't actually been studied for that?
No, we just don't know. That's, when I say RAD is my favorite, because I know for sure it does it.
Right.
The other ones, we just don't know. And I know that more in the US, LGD 4033 has been, compounding pharmacies. That's the only one they sell. And there is, and it's the one with the lowest ratio. It's 10:1, anabolic to androgenic. But the reason they use this one, it's very simple. Because it's the one that has been the most, has the most studies.
Which
So
one, the LGD?
LGD. So they feel more confident using this one because they can back it up with more studies than with the other one.
But this MK2866 has some pretty impressive benefits, right? Like it's got an increase in endurance, increase in strength, increase in hypertrophy. So just putting on more muscle.
They all do that.
And it helps to heal from injury, which is
RAD 140, LGD, they all will do the same thing because they all act on the same receptors.
Yeah. And so this one also, we didn't talk about it so much on the RAD 140. The RAD 140 has a pretty long half-life. This one has also like a 24-hour half-life.
At least, a bit more.
You only need to dose once a day, which is
once a day,
which is a benefit. Again, it's an 8 to 12 week cycle so that you don't,
if you use it for performance purposes. Again, they were designed to replace testosterone in a testosterone replacement therapy. Why do we call it replacement therapy? Because the testosterone is not there anymore and it is not coming back. So you need to replace it. So meaning that if you go on the replacement therapy, that's pretty much nonstop for the rest of your life.
Right.
And they were designed for that, and that's what they had in mind. And when they said it was a very safe and maybe better alternative to testosterone, they had in mind that it would be taken forever. That cycling aspect of things.
Yeah.
Talk to any doctor, he's going to say, what are you talking about? No.
So you're saying, no, you don't need to cycle this, that you can just basically keep using it?
Of course, not in athletic performance dosages.
Right.
Example, an athlete may use 20 milligrams a day to gain muscle mass. In a replacement therapy protocol, maybe you'll use 5 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Knowing that normal man at its peak will produce 5 to 10 milligrams of testosterone per day.
Okay.
So
for a woman, you would use even less, right?
Yeah, even less. Like
2.5 maybe?
2.5, 5 at most for a while. The thing is, 2.5 would be great, actually.
Okay. So now just to be clear with our listeners, and I'm sure anybody who's a competitive athlete already knows this, but just to be clear, they can test for this, right? And this would be a big fat.
And that's one of the main things because they know of the generalization of use and they do test for it pretty often.
Okay, so that's Ostarine. We might just make our 45-minute mark. It's possible. Okay. The last one I wanted to talk about today, because there's more we can talk about, but for today, we're going to talk about MK677, which is ibuprofen.
It is
a ghrelin agonist, right? So it mimics ghrelin, which is really cool because that means you're helping to upregulate your endogenous growth hormone production. I had originally, when I heard about this, I had read that it was like keeping your foot on the gas and it could cause growth hormone bleed, which means growth hormone normally in our body pulses on and off through the day. And the implication was that this would artificially raise growth hormone for too long through the day. So you'd get this, you just have too much of a good thing. So why don't you tell us a little bit?
Well, it's actually what it does. It makes you spurt growth hormone.
Yeah, so you get the pulses.
About every 2 hours.
Which is normal.
24 hours a day, but high quantities. If you take the therapeutic dose of 25 milligrams per day, you're looking at the equivalent of 6 to 8 IUs of growth hormone per day. That's a lot.
That's a lot of growth hormone.
Some athletes at 4, half of that, it's like, whoa. It's nothing near bodybuilder levels, but it's a lot to compare. People, if you do a CGC pamorelin combo shot, maybe you'll secrete 1 IU of growth hormone. So that's a lot of growth hormone. But That's why it's a great compound, but at the same time, I don't like it.
It's very strong.
Because you have no control on it. You don't control when you have those secretion. Plus, you know, it's a ghrelin mimetic, so you're going to be hungry all the time.
Yeah, so that's one thing.
Which, but again, I use it, you know, I suggest it sometimes because let's say for older people in their 70s, 80s, they don't eat enough.
Yeah, they need to eat.
And they get frail because they just don't eat enough, the protein mostly. So, you know, it's good for their appetite and they can gain back that. And, you know, the spurs of growth hormone that helps them. They eat, they have the growth hormone. So I just wish they would come up with the same compound, but it would be like an injection. You take it, you have 1 or 2 peaks of growth hormones, and then
that's it. So it's almost like you need the half-life to be a little less.
That's the main problem.
It has the opposite problem of the others.
It's way too long, so you cannot control anything.
Yeah, it's too bad.
You take it and then it does its thing on its own.
So could you take it like 1 or 2 days a week?
I was coming to that. I started to tweak with that, and what I've been suggesting in some cases is that just do it a couple of days a week. But days together, because if let's say you do Monday and Thursday, because of the long half-life, you know, if you do it on Monday or by Wednesday, you will still have some of the effects. You understand? So I'd rather do Monday and Tuesday and then leave it for 5 days, or do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So you're going to have a huge increase in growth hormones during those days, which will increase IGF-1.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
But IGF-1 is much more stable than GH. You know, you could take your IGF-1 at 7 in the morning or at 6 in the afternoon. It's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And without any secretion of growth hormone, your IGF-1 level will take like a week, 10 days to start to drop. So if you use that technique, protocol to raise your IGF-1, do it for 2-3 days, then you will raise the IGF-1 eventually without taking the compound every day. So you kind of go around it. Because another effect, you know, growth hormone increases insulin resistance. Not all the time, just for the time it's high. So if you inject growth hormone or take a secretagogue, you'll be insulin resistant for maybe an hour and a half. So if you take it before bed, you don't care. You're going to sleep and it won't affect anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take MK677, then you become insulin resistant 24/7.
Right.
And that can lead to problems.
Yeah, metabolic issues for sure.
As if you do it a couple of days during the week, like that, Monday, Tuesday, by the time that insulin resistance actually kick in as a problem, then you stop and you come back to normal. So it's a way to mitigate the effects you don't want. You don't get rid of them, but you know, you kind of moderate them this way. So that's how I would go with MK677.
Yeah, so just to talk about a couple of the benefits of why anybody would even, so for me, for example, I don't tolerate the CJC1295 or, you know, like I have allergic reactions to them. So this could be interesting, but the way I know myself, I might do it 1 day a week. But the reasons why, first of all, good research with elderly people, it increases lean mass. It seems to help to increase metabolic rate. It increases lean mass even during caloric restriction. It has good benefits for bone density. And so what's really interesting also is it seems to improve sleep, which the growth hormone mimetics do.
Actually, all those are effects of growth hormones.
Exactly. And then the IGF-1 seems to help to increase memory and learning. So there's some brain effects for this stuff that's really interesting. Also for people who are needle phobic, doesn't need to be injected. And it does stack well with SARMs. So maybe, you know, we can talk about stacks next time. Like today, I just wanted to cover a few of these. And the other really interesting thing about this one is that it doesn't increase cortisol, which we know some of the other, like the GHRPs, like those guys can bump up cortisol, prolactin.
Well, not the one I use. Like ipamorelin doesn't, but all the other ones do.
All the other ones do. And then for some people, they will, and I'm guessing it's if they overuse it because of that consistently too high growth hormone, there's some side effects that you could experience, like joint aches, lower extremity edema.
Yeah.
Some people might get numb hands. So you got to watch, and then the increased appetite. So you got to watch for that stuff because that's really a sign that you're overdoing it. Even if
the only thing that helped, not overdoing it, and you know, that makes it easy to do it, like let's say 2 days a week, is that if you have the liquid form, it tastes amazingly bad. So your people will be very happy not to take it every day.
Unlike some people who mix rum into their stuff.
Yeah, some do.
Anyway, okay, well listen, that was great. So hopefully that's that gives people a primer on these 3 particular SARMs. We talked about the ARA. I think we'll leave the rest for next time. I mean, there's some really, you know, people give all the love to the peptides these days because they're like the new kids on the block. But I think that these compounds that have been around maybe for just as long, if not longer, also have a role to play maybe in some of these optimization.
They do, big time. It's part of, it's another tool to add to what you can use to optimize yourself, of course.
Yeah. So, and also most of these don't need to be injected. So it takes the pressure off that aspect. Okay. Is there anything else you think people should know about this stuff, or?
No, at this point, that's pretty well covered, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So they're a little bit harder to find, I think. And they've become harder to find, I guess, because as they've been kind of abused. But
no, they have been abused.
Big time, right, by athletes. So I think
they killed it.
Yeah. So you need to be talking to a doctor in regenerative or.
Well, and I know for a fact in the US, it's soon gonna be classified as if it was an anabolic steroid.
Okay.
So you know, and Canada won't be long to follow on that. So that's one reason why CanLab kind of stopped selling them, because you know, we don't want to be in the bullseyes when the shit hits the fan. You know?
But it is too bad in a way from an anti-aging perspective that they wouldn't, because it sounds to me like if they're
well, funnily, when I started CanLab, my main goal was to offer compounds for anti-aging.
Yeah.
And I was selling, we started with very few compounds. We had BPC, thymosin beta-4, epitalon for anti-aging, and we had RAD 140 and MK677 for anti-aging.
Interesting.
Because I really saw a huge potential in the anti-aging realms of compounds. Then it grew, and yes, there was a demand from athletes, so we increased. Actually, for the first year or two, our main source of revenue was from SARMs, but that helped us to raise money to reinvest in the peptides, and now it turns out that we're only peptides. So, but back then, like 4 years ago, I had them for that purpose. I never thought of athletes back then. They're
the guys that are often looking for that edge, right? They're the ones looking for the edge. And I think the whole anti-aging space is one that, I mean, it's always been there, but it's really starting to ramp up. So,
well, and a big misconception, because for many, many years, the anti-aging clinics you had all over the States, basically they were testosterone replacement therapy clinics, and then they added growth hormone. That's all they were doing, but they would call themselves anti-aging.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I don't see it as an anti-aging. I see it to improve the well-being of people as they age.
Yeah.
But as an actual anti-aging, I doubt it.
Well, anti-aging is a funny word, and I actually, you know, even though I just used it, it's not a term that I like to use because,
Plus,
yeah, time's gonna pass. You're
exactly,
gonna,
because it's not proven. You know, all those therapies, they're new, and nobody at this point who started, let's say, 20, 10, 15 years ago, you know, they're not old enough to know if, oh, will they or will not they live longer. We just don't know yet because it's too soon. But healthy aging, that we know, it does work.
Well, that's definitely the focus I have in my work with my clients is, you know, you're going to age, but you want to do it, you know, being vital, being strong,
best
being
possible way.
exactly, and just maintain that vitality for as long as possible. Okay, Jean-François, well, thank you so much for today. This was great. We are
nice again.
Under an hour. It's always a pleasure. And and we'll have a part 2 in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, the problem, you talk about my passion. I cannot stop.
I know, we all do. Listen, you and me both, right? We can never stop, but we must stop. So, thank you so much.